minimum variance frontier, and then we move to efficient frontier. And after this efficient frontier, we move to capital allocation line. And after this capital allocation line, now today I want to tell you something about indifference curve. Indifference curve. Indifference curve. Or I will say utility equation. I will tell you something about utility equation. And then I will integrate this utility plus capital allocation line. I will integrate both the satisfaction line, the utility line, the indifference curve, and capital allocation line. And we will find out the optimum portfolio for an investor, customized optimum portfolio. And that will be my end of the main concepts. And then after that, from lecture number 3, we will move to capital market line, we will move to security market line, we will go to CAPM, we will go to systematic risk, we will go to beta, we will go to unsystematic risk, and we will be doing some ratios, tenure ratio, Sharpe ratio, Jensen alpha ratio, and that we have already done, but I will be covering that part. That is easy somewhat. So technical part will be concluded today. So I have done this, I have done this, I have done this. So first point in today's lecture will be, I want to tell you how to calculate indifference curve of an investor. And then after you understood that indifference curve, then we will integrate, I will integrate capital allocation line and indifference curve, and we will find out one optimum portfolio. So I'm going to start with indifference curve. Now my question to you will be, now you tell me, I have told you there are different types of investors: risk lover, risk allergic, and risk averse. And most of the investors are risk averse. Now within risk averse, I mean these are rational investors. We all are risk averse, but we can have, we can have two categories of risk averse investors: less risk averse, and more risk averse. So there are two types of investors we can have: less risk averse and more risk averse. It means less risk averse means if I increase the rate of risk, 1 unit of risk, then they will expect 1 unit or at least 2 units of return to be increased in the same proportion. That is less risk averse. But when I say more risk averse, it means they will require, for 1 unit of increase in risk, they require huge increase in the return. So that something is named as, more risk averse. So now the point is indifference. What is the meaning of indifference? If I see the dictionary meaning, what do you mean by indifference? Only indifference. I'm not talking of curve, I'm not talking of anything. What do you mean by indifference? It means whether I will give you, tea or coffee, it will hardly matter you. Both the things are same, and they will give the same level of satisfaction to you. That they will give same level of utility, or they will give same level of satisfaction to you. That something is named as indifference. As the name indicates, indifference. It hardly matters. If you clear your examination in June or December for a CFA aspirant. So I will say he is indifferent. He has no dreams. He is indifferent. So when I say indifferent, it means a person can be indifferent if risk and return, supposingly risk is 5% and return is 10%. I am taking double just to understand the concept. And if I increase risk by 6%, then return will be 12%. If I increase risk to 7%, then return will be 14%. If I increase risk to 8%, then return will be 16%. So whether this investor will be at this point, or whether this investor will be at this point, whether at this point, or whether at this point, he will remain indifferent, because it will giving him the same level of satisfaction. As he increases the risk, return is also being increased. As I increase the risk, return is also being increased at the same proportion. So he will feel happy at any of the point. So when he is getting the same level of satisfaction at any of the point, then he will be selecting any of the portfolio between that. And this if I draw it, if I draw this information, if I draw this information, then in that case I will say, let risk be on x-axis and let return be on y-axis. At 5%, 10% is the return. At 6% risk, 12% is the return. At 7%, 14% is the return. At 8%, 16% is the return. And if I join these points, so they will, somewhat give me a curve. I have just drawn that roughly. If I join these points, they will give me a curve, a shape of a curve, So this is named as indifference curve for an investor, because if risk is 5%, then return is this much. If this, then return is increased. If this, then return is increased. If this, return is increased accordingly. So he will feel happy at any of the point of this indifference curve. So indifference means when an investor is indifferent on any of the point of that curve, that is named as indifference. You're getting my point? And if we join these points, it will be it will have a shape of a curve. So that's why it is named as indifference curve. Now the point is, this is indifference curve 1, this is indifference curve 2, this is indifference curve 3, and this is indifference curve 4. There are 4 types of indifference curves. I have prepared in this graph. There can be multiple types of indifference curves. Now the point is, one curve which I have drawn like this is this, and supposedly the second I have drawn like this. So what is the difference when which investor will be going in the topmost highest indifference curve and which will be in at the lowest indifference curve? Now it depends, upon the nature of the investor. Supposedly this is investor A and supposedly this is investor B. So these are the two investors. Supposedly these are the two investors, investor A and investor B. I am assuming that investor A is low risk averse. I have already told you that what is the meaning of low risk averse. I have told you in the last class, that there are different types of investors. Within risk averse, there are low risk and high risk. When I say low risk, it means their expectation, if risk increases, their expectation for return will also increase, but at a proportionate level. But if that investor is high risk averse, then for 1% increase in risk, they want 10% increase in return. Those are named as high risk averse. Now it depends from person to person. It depends upon his preferences. It depends upon his utility curve. It depends upon his risk score. It depends upon the questionnaire which he will be filling up. It depends upon so many factors that whether he is less risk averse or high risk averse. That is not a big issue. That is not a big problem. The point is, if a person is less risk averse, there will be indifference curve will be flatter. And if investor is risky, if is high risk averse, then the curve will be more steeper. You're getting my point? So there can be different types of investors, and hence depending upon their preferences, depending upon their utility, depending upon their satisfaction, depending upon their formula, depending upon their preferences, depending upon their questionnaire, we will find out their risk aversion score. Risk aversion score. Portfolio manager will calculate its risk aversion score, and on the basis of that he will find out that whether the investor is less risk averse or more risk averse. That is not a big deal. Now up to this point, I am repeating it. I have told you that what is the meaning of indifference. Firstly, I have told you the dictionary meaning of indifference. Then I have told you on the basis of risk and return. If I increase risk, then return is also increased proportionately. Then that investor will be indifferent in that whole curve. In that whole curve, he will be indifferent. Then again, I have told you. Then I have told you that there can be different types of investors. If I divide investors into two categories, one can be a person can be a low risk averse, and second can be a more risk averse. If a person is more risk averse, then his graph, his indifference curve will be more steeper, and if a person is less risk averse, his graph or his curve will be flatter. So there can be different types of indifference curves, and within indifference curves, which portfolio you will be selecting. Again, I am coming to that point. Supposingly, this is an indifference curve, this is an indifference curve, this is an indifference curve, and within this indifference curve A, B, C, there are three portfolios. Now, investor A, if this indifference curve suits him, he will be indifferent whether he is going for portfolio A or whether he is going for portfolio B or whether he is going for portfolio C, because if I increase the risk, return is also increased. If I increase the risk, return is also increased proportionately. So he will be indifferent. But if I draw if I draw two portfolio in difference curve two, let it be D and E and let it be F and G. Now if I want to tell you that this is indifference curve 1, this is indifference curve 2, this is indifference curve 3, if between A, B and C, which portfolio will be selected by that investor? If he is less risk averse, he will select A. If he is more risk averse, then he will go for C, because he is getting the same level of satisfaction at that indifference curve. Now, in case I tell you that please tell me if he want to select between A, D, and F, then which portfolio will be selected by that investor? I will say in that case F will be selected by that investor. That is a portfolio with a higher indifference curve, because assumption is at this level of return, risk is same. If risk is same, if risk is same, he will go in that portfolio which gives him maximum return. So if I want to select between A, B, C, then A if he is less risk averse. But if I want to select between A, D, and F, all are in different indifference curves, but risk is same. If I say risk is 10%, then whether you will select a portfolio with 80% return or 100% return, you will go in 100% return. It means you will select F if risk is same. If I assume that this is the level of risk, then which indifference curve you will be? You will be on F point. So up to this point, I have told you what is the meaning of indifference curve, how many types of indifference curves are there, how many portfolios can be there, how an investor can be indifferent in that portfolio, in that indifference curve. So let me show you a handwritten slides. I have prepared some for you. I will be happy enough if you prepare these, because if you do this, there will be no need to learn or to read those long, lengthy pages of CFA level curriculum or Squazer. There is no need to, need to even refer them. Just write the first point. So then the first point I told you what is the meaning of indifference curve. Indifference curve. An indifference curve plots the risk and expected return that an investor finds equally acceptable. The word is equally acceptable. An indifference curve plots combination of risk and expected return that an investor will find equally Equally acceptable, it means that which will give him equal level of satisfaction, equal level of utility. That is named as indifference curve. Now, indifference curve will slope upward because, now why they are sloping upward, I have given the logic. Because risk averse investors will take, the risk averse investors will take more risk if they are compensated with greater return. If now the point is, in case of more risk averse investors, they want more return for one level, for one level of risk they want 7%, 8%, 10% higher increase in the return, so it will slope upward. So this logic again I have given you why it is upward. A more risk averse will have steeper, I have just told you there are two types of indifference curves, steeper and flatter. If a person is more risk averse, if a person is more risk averse, then there will be a steeper indifference curve. Flatter indifference curve means less risk averse person. So up to this point number 4, I have just told you what is the meaning of indifference point, indifference curve, how many curves can be there, what that curve shows us. Now following is the pictorial presentation of indifference curves. I have already given you and explained you how we can calculate or prepare this indifference curve with the help of case study. 5% risk, 10% return, 6% risk, 12% return. So these are at the same level. ABC are the different portfolios at indifference curve 1. D and E are the portfolios at indifference curve 2, which will give him same level of satisfaction. At indifference curve 3, there are two portfolios F and G, which will give him same level of satisfaction. So if I say you that please tell me which is the best portfolio in A, B and C, then you will select A if a person is risk averse. But if I tell you, please tell me which portfolio you will select between A, D and F, if the level of risk is same. Just see, I have prepared an arrow in this. The level of risk is same. Then you will say portfolio F is to be selected. So I have written that. Please read down. Please note down these notes. Very important. Very important. Note number 1. A investor can have different or multiple indifference curves. There can be different types of indifference curves. I have prepared in my, I have taken the help of Google Baba also. That how many types of indifference curves can be there in Wikipedia, as per Wikipedia. Now see, these types of indifference curves can be there. There can be different types. This is economics at good X and good Y. I have taken in x-axis, risk and return. So there can be different types of, there can be different types of, there can be different categories of indifference curves. I have taken with the help of risk and return. They have prepared on the basis of economics. So no need to worry. Just see this. Just see this. In this also they have prepared indifference curve, like just like I have prepared for you. So indifference curve is a curve which tells or which gives a particular level of satisfaction to an investor. Now see, this is the, so just write down note number 1. An investor may have different multiple indifference curves. I have prepared for that. There can be different portfolios in one indifference curve. Just like I have assumed ABC has 3 portfolios, there can be infinite number of portfolios within that indifference curve. As in indifference curve 1, there are 3 portfolios ABC. Indifference curve 2, there are 2 portfolios D and E. Indifference curve 3, there are 2 portfolios F and G. I have just for simplicity's sake, I have taken this. There can be infinite number of portfolios. So note number 3. Now an investor will be indifferent. Now an investor will be indifferent. I have given the example that if risk is 4%, return is 8. If I increase risk by double, then my return will also be double. So this is named as same level of satisfaction to the investor. Note number 4, portfolio ABC will give him same incidence of utility or satisfaction. Please write down. Portfolio, note number 4, portfolio A, portfolio B, portfolio C, because they are in the same indifference curve, they will give him same level of satisfaction. Note number 5. In case a choice is given to an investor for portfolio A, portfolio D, and portfolio F. Now we are assuming that they are at the same level of risk. So, but naturally he will select for portfolio F, because it is at the highest indifference curve, because it will give him highest possible utility. If risk is same, an investor will select the portfolio with the highest return. Okay. Now I am going to integrate. I want to just tell you that can be two types of investors. One is less risk averse and second is more risk averse. If an investor is less risk averse, then the curve will be flatter. If a person is more risk averse, then the curve will be steeper. Steeper. I have explained also, please prepare it. Flatter, when risk averse, less risk averse. When steeper, because he will be expecting more return for given level of increase in risk. He want more than proportional increase in return. So that's why that is steeper and this is flatter. Now the last concept I want to tell you, I have told you capital allocation line. Before that, I have told you minimum variance, then efficient frontier, then capital allocation line, then now I have told you indifference curve. Now I want to mix that indifference curve with capital allocation line. And the point where that indifference curve will be at tangent. The highest indifference curve, I repeat, the highest indifference curve which will be at tangent point of that capital allocation line is named as optimum portfolio. Please write down. This is the most important concept which I am going to tell you. Seventh point. Integration of. I want to integrate indifference curve and capital allocation line. Now I want to mix and then I will prepare a concept which will be named as optimum portfolio. So A point. I have written, firstly I have discussed with you what is the meaning of capital allocation line. And this is like this. Then, on the basis of different utility functions, equations, questionnaires, risk aversion scores, indifference curves can be plotted for the investor. Now, whether we will see whether it will be steeper or whether it will be flatter or it will be less flatter. It depends upon the risk aversion scores. It depends upon the preferences. It depends upon the questionnaire. It depends upon the preferences. So we can find out that which is the best indifference curve which is suitable for that investor. And then these can be the different types of indifference curves. And the last point is C point. This is the crux of all the lectures, 7 lectures. The higher indifference curve, which is tangent to the higher indifference curve, which is tangent to capital allocation line, will be preferred. This is most important. The higher indifference curve, which is tangent to capital allocation line, will be preferred. And following is the integrated diagram of this I prepared for you. Now I have mixed capital allocation line. Hope you remember that. What is the meaning of capital allocation line? When we introduce risk-free asset along with risky asset, then capital allocation line will be formed, and the middle point is named as risky. If we invest 100% risky, and left hand side to that will be if it is a lending portfolio, and right hand side of that will be borrowing portfolio. And I have just told you indifference curves. Now the indifference curve number 2 is tangent to capital allocation line. Even indifference curve number 1 is tangent to capital allocation line. So I have numbered them as K and J. But I will select K because the indifference curve, the higher indifference curve will give higher level of satisfaction. So between K and J, I will be selecting K. Now this point is named as optimum portfolio. This is the point which is named as optimum portfolio, which is calculated by the combination of utility and capital allocation line. Hope you're getting this. You're getting this. So please prepare a diagram, my dear sir. I have prepared for you. So this is, firstly I have prepared, capital allocation line. So this is capital allocation line. These are the indifference curves. Indifference curve 1, indifference curve 2, indifference curve 3. Now the curve which is higher indifference curve, which is tangent to capital allocation line, will be optimum portfolio. No, this is on the left hand side of market portfolio. It means it is a lending portfolio. So let's see, portfolio K happens to be on the higher indifference curve and in tangent. So both the conditions should be fulfilled. In portfolio K, both the conditions are not being fulfilled. No doubt it is tangent, but it is not the higher. If the point is tangent and higher, investor will be advised to be point number K, that is portfolio K, because just write down. Because portfolio K is selected on the basis of risk aversion and it is on the left hand side of risky portfolio and hence it is a lending portfolio. So my dear sir, I have told you how we can find out the optimum portfolio with the help of indifference curve and capital allocation line. Hope you have enjoyed this lecture. Be happy, be jolly, be cheerful, be happy, be jolly,